What's up, YouTube? How are you guys doing? My name is Aziz and I'm an AI automation engineer and instructor. And today we are going to build another n8n workflow, which will be able to handle any kinds of email inquiry that you get. And you might think, all right, that sounds pretty simple, which it is basically. However, first of all, responding to emails is the most common use case within the realm and the abilities that AI and automations give you. And then second of all, it will give us an idea how we can take a look into multi-level scalable agentic systems, and then thirdly, we will be able to cover RAG, retrieval-augmented generation, and we will take a glimpse into this. So imagine that we have a case like this, right? So we have an inbox, a usual email inbox, as you would expect. And let's say we are working for a company in the industrial component sector, right? Which is basically dealing with industrial components like screws and everything you can think of. And you might get emails like these, right? So this is something that I've sent to myself, obviously, and this is just a demo. And so this might be a customer questions. I'm looking for wood screws, about 500 pieces. Do you have any of these? Right. So this is a very simple inquiry or a very, very simple message. Same like this one. Hello, I've heard you've got sprockets in your inventory. How much are they? Right. But then you might also get complaints from customers, something like this. Hey, sorry, but I've been waiting for an answer for like 5 days now. What's taking you so long? And you might have to deal with these different kinds of inquiries and with these kinds of emails in different ways. And you want your email agent to adhere to certain principles. And then obviously also in regards to the product availability question, give the right answer, right? And let's say you have a database like this one. So this is just a simple Google sheet, but this can be in Excel. This could be something in SAP or even in MySQL database, right? So this is just a placeholder for any kind of database. And I'm using two databases right here, two tables. So the first one is in Google Sheets. The second one is in Airtable, and they just contain, a sample database of certain products. And this is pretty realistic, because, in the real world, it's not like you always have the best practices, i.e. having a single source of truth, but you might have different kinds of data sources that you need to connect to, and your email agent has to connect to as well, right? And then in regards to the complaints, you might have something like this, right? So you have like a customer service guideline or a brand guideline, which you want your email agent to adhere to, right? And this is unstructured data that he has to have access to and be able to read and retrieve, right? So how do we build this in n8n and can make sure that every answer adheres to everything we have in our database? So this is one of the agents. This is the first level agent, and it's pretty simple, as you can see. But we are going to through each and every node nevertheless. So first of all, we are going to start the whole flow with a manual trigger, but in real life, this would probably be something like a Gmail trigger, where every time you receive an email like this one, that this flow would be triggered. Just for demo purposes, I'm going to manually trigger this and then get all the messages from that folder, from the inbox, right? So when I jump into this, then you can see that this is connected to my Gmail account. The resource is a message, and I want to get many messages. And I'm limiting this to 5 emails for now. And I've also filtered this by the folder or the label demo, for demo purposes right now. And then obviously you can adjust this to your special use case. And then we have a read status where I'm basically just getting all unread emails only, right? So this is the first step. So I'm getting all the emails that I have received in this specific inbox. And for instance, in this case, I would only get this one because it's the only one that's unread, right? Then we would have the first level agent, and AI agents are a native feature of n8n. So when I open up the sidebar, then I can choose from the AI section. And the very first, this is the AI agent. When I open this up, then you basically have a couple of settings that you would need to set up, that you would need to make sure you have. And when I open this up, then you can see that the only thing that I'm using is actually to have a source for the prompt, which is a user message. And then I also have a system message, right? And the system message chronologically will be the first message that your LLM will receive. So in our case, this is the first message, and you can see this is the whole prompt, and you will get everything, by the way, on my site. And I'm going to get into this in a second. And this is so a prompt which will basically tell the first level agent that his main tasks are to classify the inquiry of the customer, then to forward it to a specific agent. And now we get into the multi-level agent and the scalability part, and then to reply also to the specific email that he got, right? And then it's going into a little more detail. And it's also providing examples so that we don't need to do zero-shot prompting. And this is already it. Then we have the user prompt, which is basically just, this is now the customer's email. And then we are entering or pasting the complete message from the previous node, from the get messages node, into this prompt, right? So this is already it. Now, I'm using a chat model here. The one that I'm using is GPT-5 Mini, and obviously you can choose the one of your liking. So if you can see this, we have a little red asterisk here. And then this means that we have to add to this node an LLM, because without it, obviously, it will not be able to work. But what we can also do is to add tools, right? And you can see that I have added two tools. The first one is called escalation. The second one is called inventory, right? So if you click on tools, then you have the ability, or you can choose from a lot of different tools that are available within n8n itself. And one of these, and you'll find this at the very top, is call n8n workflow tool, which is basically our gateway into this multi-level agent system. Because what this does is gives us the ability, or the agent rather, the first level agent rather, the ability to call another agent, right? So it's basically almost like you have an employee or a colleague who's asking a more specific colleague, or another colleague who is more capable or more knowledgeable in regards to the specific task, right? So you can build basically a department of agents who are specialists in a specific field, right? So we have an inventory agent, and now I'm going to switch to a different workflow. As you can see, this is a separate workflow, and the very first trigger that you can see here is called when executed by another workflow, and this is exactly what's happening, right? So this agent will be able to call this inventory agent. And if he does, then this will be basically the entry point, the trigger of this specific agent. So it will not be able to be triggered in a different way or in another way than being called by this first level agent, right? And then, as you can see, it's also extremely simple. So we have the inventory agent itself. And as you can see, we also have a system message here, which is also quite simple. Then we have another user prompt, very, very quick and very short. And then this agent in itself will be able to connect to different databases, right? And we have chosen the Sheets and the Airtable tool. And these are exactly those which will give us the ability, or the agent rather, the ability to look for a specific product within those database tables, right? And this is already what's happening in the background. Now, we're also going to take a look into the escalations agent, which is the second agent here. So I'm going to jump into this one, and we have basically the same principle. So we have the trigger, which is called when executed by another workflow. Then we have the escalations agent with his specific prompts. There's another system prompt, then we have the user prompt, and then we're basically feeding it with the query that he received from the first level agent, right? Now, he has a different kind of tool. As you can see, it's quite similar to what we have here. So there's a Google Sheets tool and an Airtable tool, which is looking for the records, or which is able to look for specific records. And now we, as you can see, have another tool, which is called Pinecone Vector Store. And this is our gateway into being able to retrieve data from another source, which is unstructured, so it's basically based on a document, an unstructured document. And we also need an LLM for this. Also, again, I'm using GPT-5 Mini for this. And then we have to have an embedding tool, basically an embedding model, which is also provided by OpenAI, but also from other providers. But I'm using OpenAI again here in this stage. And when I open this tool right here, then you can see that I have a certain connection to my credentials, or a credentials to my account in Pinecone, and we're going to get into Pinecone in a second. The operation mode will be to retrieve documents as a tool for AI agent. This is exactly what we want. And then we're going to give it a description what this is able to do. And then we basically have the database, if you will. It's called an index actually within Pinecone, that we are choosing where to retrieve that specific data from, right? Which is basically nothing but the separation of this document into so-called chunks, right? And I'm going to, or I have already saved those chunks into a Pinecone vector store, and I'm going to show you this in a second. And then it will be able to retrieve those chunks, so these text snippets, if you will, from this specific vector store, right? So it will be able to retrieve the data from there. And that's already the whole architecture. So nothing really complicated, but you would have to know how to build this. And then also in regards to the connection, there are two important parts. So when I'm using the first level agent, I have to basically, first of all, tell him this, which is a quite common practice and best practice actually, which will heavily increase the quality of your agent's capabilities. which is first of all to use the description within the tool. So when I'm jumping out of this again, I'm jumping into the tool, into this subnode. They are also called subnodes again, so of the inventory agent, and I'm telling it what this specific tool is able to do, because this will give the agent, the first level agent, to another layer basically to better understand what he is actually capable of and what kinds of tools he has access to. And this is something like this. So we can say use this tool to call up the inventory agent. He's responsible for inquiries regarding stock levels, delivery times, prices, etc. Right? And this is already enough. Then we can basically say, all right, source, what should be the source for this specific agent? And source sounds like really complicated, but it's actually just, if you choose database, just a list of the agents that you have available in your own n8n account. So you can basically call every other workflow within your own account, right? And this is exactly what we're doing here. So we're calling the inventory agent. Now the workflow inputs then themselves, they will be defined by the underlying sub workflow, which is in our case, this inventory agent. And when I jump into this, then you can see we have the workflow inputs, and this one is called query, and then we're entering something like this. I'm going to get to this in a second, but this query comes from this agent, right? So, or from this flow rather, because in this trigger flow, when I open this up, then you can see that I'm using define using fields below. So where should this input data come from? And then I'm giving it basically a name and a type, right? And the name will be defined, or will determine what the input field in this specific case will look like, which means that if I change this, let's say query, I'm going to call this query demo, and I'm going to save the flow. I'm going back into the first level agent, and now you can see that I'm already getting this little yellow triangle, basically telling me something has changed. And now let's take a look into this specific label here. I'm going to refresh this, and now you can see it says query demo, right? So this is where that specific term is coming from. So I'm going to change this back into query, save it again, jump back into my first level agent. I'm getting the yellow triangle again, reloading, and now I get the query, right? Now, as for this step in regards to the value, so how should the agent determine what to input actually, or what to forward to the specific agent? We are going to use the from AI expression, and this is called a method basically. And here you can already see in the docs, or in the snippet of those docs, you can see populate this with the parameter passed from the large language model. And now I'm going to add an idea basically, or a hint, which will give the LLM an idea what to look for within that specific query, right? Now in our case, this might not be that complicated because we just want to pass on the whole query to the inventory agent, right? But if, let's say, we have a specific email agent where we only want to forward the email address, right? Then we would call it, or we could call it something like email or mail address or whatever, right? So this is basically not a hard coded value in that sense, or key, but rather something that hints this large language model to the right parameter that he should pass on to the underlying agent, right? So this is what's happening. So I'm going to change this back into query, and I'm going to save it again. And now the whole query that comes from the inventory agent will be passed on this level, right? And now the inventory agent will receive this here. And you can also see now this is the first level agent's query, and this is exactly what we are passing on so that he will be able to do his tasks. All right, now let's take a quick look into the subnodes, into our database tables. I'm going to open up the Google Sheets subnode, and here you can see I've connected this to my Google Sheets account, right? Then we have a tool description which will be set automatically. The resource is a sheet within a document, and the operation is to get rows, right? We want to get rows. The actual document is called Skript Manufacturing Limited. This is just a sample Google Sheet that I have set up. And then we have the sheet 1, which is exactly the one that you're seeing right here, right? And that's already it. So you don't need to add any kinds of filters or any kind of explicit query or something like this. The agent will do that for you. And that's exactly the same with Airtable right here. So we have our connection to our Airtable. Then we have the same parts as we had before. I'm choosing the same table again, or I'm choosing this specific database table here. And then again, I don't need to add any kinds of formula. The AI agent will do that by himself, right? And this is already it. And the output of this query will be available to the first level agent, to the one that's basically above the inventory agent. And this is how you pass data between different kinds of levels, right? Now, the last part is that we want to get into the escalations agent again. So we already said that we have access to a vector store, right? And now I'm going to jump into my Pinecone dashboard, which you see here. And here you can see that we have, within my Pinecone account of in my organization, and now the default project, and then I'm within a specific database, and this specific database is this one. So this is what I call Skript Manufacturing Guidelines, right? And if we take a look into the amounts of records that are saved here, you can see that there are 16. And if I'm jumping back into the source document, then you can see that those 16 records that have now been generated out of this document are basically just text snippets which are taken out of this document, right? So that the LLM will be able to retrieve this, and we can even prove this. So when I'm take a look at this, and you can see this is one chunk, basically one text chunk, and when I click on fetch right here, and you can see that this is the actual text that's lying behind this, right? So let's take a part of this, or let's take it from here until here. So prefer text, prefer short paragraphs and bullet points for clarity. And when I look for this specific sentence, then you can see that this is exactly what's written down here, right? And this will enable this specific inventory, or rather this specific escalations agent, to have access to that data, right? Now, how do I get the data from this specific document into this Pinecone vector store? There's, at least at the time of this recording, not like an upload document function that you can just drag and drop your PDFs or your docs into Pinecone just like this, but I have built a very simple, as you can see, embedding automation, basically, which is using OpenAI's text embedding 3 large model to embed the text from a document like this into a vector store like this. And you will get access to this, and I'm happy to share this with you. That being said, I would be very grateful if you would subscribe to my channel and just let me know, what kind of topics you would like to learn more about. And then in addition to this, I am building Skriptt AI School, which is also a school community. And there you will not only get access to all the assets that we are talking about here, but you will also, get into every topic that's possible in regards to learning how n8n works. Even if you're a complete beginner, you will learn everything in regards to n8n. You will learn how to build AI agents. We just talked about RAG, how you can scrape anything by using API, and everything in regards to database tables, LLM prompting, prompt engineering, and so on and so forth, and a lot more. Now, this will be a paid community in the future, but at the time of this recording, this is free. So if you join today, it will stay free for you forever, right? So if you want to have access to this, then just jump into this community and you will have access to this free forever. And jumping back into the automation, so let's also see how this works. I'm going to demo this really quickly. So let's say we have this query right here. So somebody's looking for these kinds of screws. So I'm going to run the automation now, and let's see what happens. So we got one message, and now the agent is basically categorizing and forwarding it to the right agent, right? So we had an inventory question. So this is already interesting that he chose the correct agent, because we do have an inventory question. So forwarding this to the escalation agent wouldn't have made much sense, but what he's doing right now does. So let's see what he outputs. And by the way, if we jump into the inventory agent and we jump into the executions tab at the top right here, then you can see that it is actually running now, and it has been for 30 seconds. All right, and now it's done. It took 2 minutes, almost 2 minutes, 1 minute and 50 seconds. And now you can see all the green check marks, and you can see that it used both tables, or both databases, at least those placeholders that we are using for this, that we connected it to, right? So it did use Cheats and it did use Airtable, which is great because, as I've mentioned, in many companies, you don't have this single source of truth, like this perfect setups. You have some data here, some is stored here, some is stored there. And this is a realistic scenario. And then it does make sense to check for every possible data source, right? And this is exactly what it did. So let's see what it output in the agent itself. So we got the green check marks back. We have an item, and we're also at the very end creating a draft, so this human in the loop principle. So we're not immediately answering and sending the email back to the customer, but we are creating a draft which will give us, or our employees in our departments, the possibility to, first of all, check if the answer that the agent has constructed is actually correct, or at least take a really quick look into this, and then have a really one-click solution to take care of all our emails, right? And here you can see, hi Mike. So it did take the actual name of that inquiry. We're going to take a look into this again. This is called Mike, so this is correct. And then in regards to the actual answer, thanks for your inquiry. We can help. A couple of clarifying questions. First, what length and material coding do you want the M8 wood screws? Also, please provide your shipping address and everything else. This is nice. Unit price 18 cents, 500 pieces. $90, 1022 available. So let's take a look into, I think it was here. Yes, and here you can see wood screw M8, 1022 pieces, but he did ask for a clarifying question, because apparently there are ambiguous results in that regard, so that he can make sure that the customer is actually getting the correct answer in regards to the specific product he's looking for. So this would be a really great answer. So let's take the next email. So we have like a complaint. Hey, sorry, but I've been waiting for 5 days. Now I'm going to check this as unread again, so that we will be able to retrieve this. Going back into my n8n first level agent. Now let's see what happens again. Going to run this. And now you can see that it is choosing the correct agent again. We're choosing the escalation agent, or the first level agent is actually choosing the escalation path, which is correct because we do have a complaint right now. So this has nothing to do with inventory currently. And we're going to take a look into the escalation agent executions. And this one is also running, which is perfect. And we are just going to wait for it to finish. Great, and this one's done as well, took 37 seconds, and as you can see, it did take a look into the vector store itself, and when I'm jumping back into the first level agent, then we can see all the green check marks again. We have another draft, so let's see what it created. Hi, John, first of all, and this was correct, I believe. The second one is, yeah, John Doe, and we have the following answer. We're sorry for the delay and frustration. You should not have waited for 5 days. I've escalated your case internally and will clear update within 24 hours and find resolution no later than 5 working days. And obviously, we will have to double check if this is actually what's written in our customer service guidelines, but I highly assume, and you can already see this, that it's quite critical, and he told them that it's 24 hours, so I believe he's referring to this one. So fantastic. It did take a look into the documents via the Pinecone vector store, right? Via the Pinecone database and vector database, which is fantastic, which is exactly what we wanted. And now you can already see that this has a lot of potential, right? Because you could basically have experts for every department or for every use case or for every kind of complaint or every kind of inquiry that you would get from your customers or potential customers, right? And this is a really powerful system, which is just the basis. And obviously you can scale this to your liking and to your specific use case and environment. All right, this is it for today. As I've mentioned, if you want to join, then I'm happy to welcome you in the Skriptt AI school, and you will get all the assets right here. And this is something that I will put in the description, and I'm happy to see you in the next video. Thanks a lot for your attention, and see you next time. Bye.